2 consecutive years as Vice Chair of the Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Lawson-Remer has been a fixture in our community for years. She is a third-generation San Diegan and a proud graduate of La Jolla High School and lives in Encinitas with her daughter. During her time on the board, Supervisor Lawson-Remer has driven change and produced results to address climate change, help the homeless, provide mental health and addiction treatment, support business growth, and confront the rise in housing costs. For example,
she has helped the homeless, taking the number of shelter beds and safe parking spots operated by the county from 0 to 900, protected our kids and communities from fentanyl by suing the opioid manufacturers for $100 million and reinvesting their profits in education, prevention, and addiction treatment. Before becoming supervisor, she worked as an economist and environmental attorney for the World Bank, the United Nations, and Amnesty International. And she also served as a senior advisor in the Obama administration, working for the U.S. Treasury Department. She also worked as a professor at UC San Diego, where she taught graduate students how to develop and analyze public policy. It is my pleasure to introduce our District 3 County Supervisor, Terra Lawson-Remer.
Well, first of all, thank you, Chris and Christine, for that very warm introduction. I also would like to thank our other co-hosts, Carlsbad Chamber, New Village Arts, Xbox, Carlsbad Village Association, the Taquitos Lagoon Foundation, and thank you, as always, to the New Village Arts Foundation for letting us use your amazing space. So thank you so much. And if you don't already support our co-hosts, please do. They're doing great things for our community. Before we begin, I have a proclamation to present. Can I have Wesley from Xbox join me? Okay, so the Plus Box has been an incredible partner that has been at the forefront of tackling food insecurity in our region. They've given out thousands of pounds of food, and I could not think of a better organization that leads with their values and puts words into action. So, we have this very cool proclamation for you all. It's very long, but the most important part says that whereas the County of San Diego is proud to recognize and honor the individuals and organizations that are dedicated to the best ideas of public service, and Plus Box is one such worthy organization. Now therefore be it proclaimed by Vice Chair Lawson-Remer that we commend Plus Box for your outstanding years of service and dedication to our region, and do hereby declare this 8th day of May 2024 to be Plus Box Day throughout San Diego County. Okay, let me try to take this out. Okay, great. So first of all, thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy lives to be here and talk with me about what we're doing to transform San Diego County and make sure we do everything possible to make government actually work for people. So before I kind of begin, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we've been working on, and then we're going to have some time for questions. So I just want to get a sense of folks that are here tonight. How many is it your first time coming to speak with me or first time meeting me tonight? Wow, this is so great. I'm so excited. I'm so honored, honestly. I know how busy everyone is. So thank you so much for being here. So team with cards, raise your hand. If you can look around, you've got Evan, you've got Aaron. A lot of folks already submitted questions as part of your RSVP. But if you didn't do so, please raise your hand over the next couple minutes, and Evan and Aaron will come around with a card so that you can submit your question and fill it out. We really want to make sure we get a chance for everyone to get their questions answered tonight. So if you would like to ask a question and you didn't pre-submit it, please raise your hand. You can do it now or you can do it over the next few minutes. But raise, shout, Evan, Aaron, you guys will come and bring a card. Okay, great. And I see a woman here who already has a card filled out. So please Please come grab it. And another gentleman here. Thank you. I'm not going to talk too long in terms of introductory comments because I'm really here to hear from you and give us a chance to have a real conversation. I think very big picture, I am very excited to now represent Carlsbad. There was redistricting at the end of 2021, and so now Carlsbad is part of the best district in San Diego County. We are the coastal district. Yes, absolutely. We go from Carlsbad to Coronado. So we've got all the greatest beaches, all the prettiest open space, and then we also even have Rancho Santa Fe. We have UC San Diego. We have Mira Mesa. We have Rancho Penasquito. But we're really I think the crown jewel of San Diego County. So I am so excited to now be Carlsbad's representative on the board. And I think it's been a game changer because this is the first time we've ever had a coastal district that could really speak with one voice about the issues that impact us most directly. And I, grew up here, third generation San Diego. My mom actually grew up in Oceanside. My grandpa was a Marine at Camp Pendleton. I grew up, down and went to La Jolla High, and so now I live in Encinitas. So I feel like I've gotten a good taste of most of the coast. I even went to elementary school in Point Loma, so I tell them that I think I've gone to school in every part of our district. And I spent a lot of my career, after I graduated, I went back to Washington. I was a senior advisor in the Obama Treasury Department. I also did a lot of work working with the World Bank, and I was a professor of public policy. And I moved home in large part. My folks thought I came back because I missed them. This is not true. I came home because I missed the ocean, and I missed surfing, and I just really wanted to be closer to being able to raise my own daughter in a place that I think is so beautiful and has so much to offer. So these issues that impact our entire coastal region are really close to my heart. So I want to talk a little bit about what we've been doing on sewage because it's such an important issue. As I think most of you know, over the last couple of years, we've seen a huge uprise in the sewage pollution coming from Tijuana, and it's starting to affect our whole region. So I, along with my colleagues, declared the Tijuana sewage crisis emergency at the county, a public health emergency, so that we would be better positioned to be at the front of the line for federal dollars as we look at how we're going to fix the sewage crisis. This has also been really important because now we're the top negotiating item when we're working with Mexico in terms of our border issues is making sure that they fix what's on their side of the border. So a quick update, we are very excited. In December, the Mexican federal government voted to fund complete repair of the Punta Bandera sewage treatment plant that's down in Rosarita that's been contributing to the big upsurge of pollution, and it's on a fast track. I think it's looking very good. They said 18 months to get that rebuilt, so that would be amazing. But the biggest hurdle was getting in the budget, and that's happening. So that's really important. Where we've seen some progress, but we still got a ways to go. We've gotten about $300 million from Congress to fix the sewage treatment plant that's on our side of the border. That's kind of catching the sewage coming over from Tijuana. Unfortunately, we still need another $310 million to go. So we're still working on that, really working hand in glove with our congressional administration. But that's why we brought forward a declaration of emergency, so that we would be able to say this is a crisis for our region. On the same vein, kind of talking a little bit more about the issues around beach pollution and coastal pollution, which is so close to my heart as a surfer. We had a huge backlog over the last multiple decades of a complete failure to invest in our stormwater infrastructure. So when I was elected, I was briefed that we have about a $2 billion backlog of investments that we've absolutely the county just was not making, it was not a priority. And I'm really focused on turning that around. I've told them that this is my number one priority in terms of infrastructure investments that we have to be making, because that's where all the runoff, that's all the polluted runoff and all the bacteria and carcinogens that are flowing into our beaches is because we don't have adequate stormwater infrastructure. And I know it's fairly far south, but people I'm sure saw what happened down in kind of San Diego with the floods and the fact that they hadn't repaired their infrastructure. And I really want to make sure that that doesn't happen on my watch, in my communities, in my neighborhoods. So we've been fighting really hard on that, and we've now moved over $200 million into stormwater infrastructure repair, and we're going to continue looking to put more and more into that. So that's another big area that we've been working on. Another area I think is important uplift, where I feel like, again, like when I ran for office, I decided to run because I thought that we needed a much better and more effective county, and better and more effective county government. And I unfortunately found out I was even more right than I thought. So I decided to run because I thought, gosh, we really could use some of the best practices in San Diego that I see us exporting around the world. We should be able to do better in our own hometown. And one of the first things I did was ask for a briefing on what are we doing on tackling the homelessness crisis, because I knew it was not good enough, it was pretty bad, but you can't really critique something and fix it until you have the data on what's actually going on. And they looked at me, county staff said, what are you talking about? I said, well, this is obviously a massive crisis. We have a homelessness crisis in our community. Like, well, what's the county's plan? It's not good enough, but let's start with what we're doing and see how we can improve. And they said, oh no, we don't work on homelessness. I said, what are you talking about? We're the region's lead behavioral health provider. This is the most important issue facing our community. They said, oh no, we don't work on homelessness because if you start working on homelessness, your voters are going to expect you to do something about homelessness, and they're going to hold you accountable. And so, no, you don't want to get involved in that, because then you'll have to do something about homelessness. So that is the orientation of the county government that I inherited just over 3 years ago when I was elected. And like I said, I thought we needed a more effective county government. I didn't realize quite how bad it was until I got in there and got my hands dirty and trying to get the work done. So it's a lot of work. This is me giving kind of the full unvarnished kind of insight into how things are working. I think we have hired some really good people. We've made massive shifts. We've gone from 0 county-supported shelter beds when I was elected to over 1,000 county-supported shelter beds. We've increased our investments in behavioral health services, as addiction treatment, fentanyl treatment, making sure people with a mental health crisis actually can get help and get services by nearly a third, by over 30%. We have 10 times more homeless outreach workers on the streets now than we did 10 years ago, than we did 3 years ago. We have now started rolling out these mobile crisis response teams all across our county. So we have 37 mobile crisis response teams, and these are folks that are trained to be first responders to people experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis, so that we can actually get them into treatment instead of into some kind of shelter in the back on the street, shelter back on the street, or into jail and spending a lot of money on the wrong services and then into the street. So these mobile crisis response teams have been very effective. About 40% of people are stabilized on site and then actually taken to the appropriate services, such as a crisis stabilization unit or a step-down treatment or assisted living. So that's another big area where we've made major shifts in terms of how we're focused on our county resources and really trying to do a lot more on behavioral health and mental health and addiction. We've been looking at trying to bring into San Diego County some of the best practices that we see in other places and looking at what's worked and what's data driven and what we know has an action impact. So there's some really, I think, exciting programs that we've imported, looking at other places, said, hey, they had really good results, let's do it here. One I'm pretty proud of is our diversion program, which has now already helped more than 800 people stay out of homelessness just in the last 6 months. So it's moving very quickly. And what it is basically is if you are on the brink of becoming homeless, you're at that crisis point where your car breaks down and you have to decide between paying for a new battery or paying your rent. And you know that if you don't pay for your new battery, you're not going to be able to get to work, and you're going to lose your job, and you're going to end up on the street. and if you don't pay your rent, you're gonna lose your home and you're gonna end up on the street. And it's an impossible kind of choice so many people face. And our diversion program steps in and says, okay, your problem is new car batteries so you can get to work, great, we're gonna buy that for you so that you don't end up on the street in the first place. Because it's so much better to keep people housed than once someone's already unhoused. It's kind of just a downward spiral. And in that same vein, we also have a senior shallow rent subsidy pilot program, which is, again, is kind of building on best practices and data-driven approaches that we looked at other jurisdictions, where we've identified seniors across our county that are extremely high risk of becoming homeless, basically because they're on a fixed income and they're a renter and the rent is rising, but their social security is staying the same. And so now we are plugging that gap with rent subsidy from the county to make sure that people can stay housed. And that's, again, the kind of programs that I think we need to do more of, these innovative programs that look to keep people in their homes instead of waiting until they end up on the streets, and it becomes just so much more expensive and so much more difficult to get people help. Because once someone's unhoused, you start ending up in a downward spiral of mental health crisis and addiction, and it just is a down. So we really are trying to keep people in their homes in the first place. Also, I don't want to keep talking at you and any of all the questions. Do just want to uplift I guess two other things that I think are really exciting. One is the big settlement that we won. When I was elected, I knew that tackling our fentanyl crisis had to be a top priority. Like I said, I have a kid, she's little, but still, you think about your kids, right? And we know that we actually have a horrible, heartbreaking crisis of fentanyl addiction and death in our community. And a lot of this started because of some of the opioid manufacturers who were deliberately pushing doctors to overprescribe pain medication and get people addicted. And so there was a lawsuit that we joined to hold the opioid manufacturers and as well as some of the consultants that helped them out accountable, and we won. So we won over $100 million as part of that settlement, which we now have in the county to spend on fentanyl interdiction, enforcement, prosecution of dealers who we know that their drugs could cause death, education in the schools, distribution of Narcan so that if there is an overdose that there's actually treatment available. So we pushed out all these programs and done it in a way that's actually utilizing funds that we won instead of just more money from taxpayers. So I'm very proud of that work as well. And then just because I'm in Carlsbad, I do want to give a quick update on the Palomar Airport situation. This has been something we've been very focused on because I know how awful it must be for your home to just be inundated with noise from airplanes and you not feel like you have any voice or any ability to do anything about it. So we work very hard. We now have a new Palomar Airport Advisory Council board structure, and we are going to be going to the Board of Supervisors on May 21st with our new appointees to that board, which I think will be much more representative of Carlsbad and Carlsbad's interests instead of businesses that have nothing to do with our community. And I'm very excited, we're in the process of putting together a roundtable with the FAA so that we know that the FAA ultimately are the decision makers about governance of the airport and when and how and what kind of planes can fly and at what hours of the day and all of those questions that matter, right? Like really, really matter. Like, can you fly in the middle of the night? What size planes can take off? What's the schedule? All of that is up to the FAA. And so we're putting together a roundtable so that they can hear from me and hear from concerns of our community. So that's an update on the Palomar Airport front. So with that, I would love to open the floor to questions. And if you haven't had a chance to submit your card, please raise your hand.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. We're going to start with the pre-submitted questions, then we'll move on to the note cards. The first question that I have on here, what can be done to improve Carlsbad bus stops? The people who are relying on public transportation are exposed to weather and fall and winter early darkness.
People riding the bus?
Thank you. It's a good question. The NCTD, the North County Transit District, controls basically everything to do with those buses. So the funding formulas, the routes, the whether or not there's any shelter. So that's not actually something that we as a county can have direct say over. But I will certainly raise this with my colleagues that are on NCTV.
Thank you for that. Next question, why is the county installing electric vehicle stations at Palmer Airport? Who will be using these stations?
I'm going to hazard what I think is correct. If my staff, if I'm wrong, we'll let you know. But to the best of my understanding, that those are for county employees. So do you know?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Next, there's 3 questions in this bucket. The first one is around Carlsbad Police Department and why they're doing nothing to stop immigrants and boats up on our beach and our city streets. And the second question related to this, pretty similar. How are we addressing immigration? Last Saturday, 10 individuals arrived by a speedboat at the beach on Carlsbad Village. They were picked up by an SUV. And then the third question is, the county received federal grant money. What are you doing to make sure that funding goes to the right places?
I think it's kind of 2 questions, right? It's the illegal boat entry questions, and then what are we doing with the federal money? So on legal boat entry, it's a tough situation because we as a county have no jurisdiction. It's the harbor police, and then once someone's dropped off, it's your local police department. So Carlsbad Police doesn't work for me. If we were in Encinitas, I could be more helpful because the sheriff that patrols Encinitas does work for me, or at least sort of works for me, at least it's county employee. The Carlsbad PD and the harbor police, I don't have any jurisdiction over. So I don't know. I mean, I really can't pretend to know why they have not done more.
As reported by the mayor after that happened, the federal law and the state law says they cannot interfere with any of the illegals coming across.
Okay, so this gentleman has an answer that I didn't have. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. So then I want to answer the other question. So if those of you who might not know, we won a major victory. We got nearly $20 million from the federal government to basically deal with our migrants who are coming across the border here in San Diego County, which is amazing. So, because we had spent $6 million of county money, and we said no more. Like, this is a federal problem. We can't be spending county money. It's an emergency, which is why we stepped forward with our original expenditures. But we can't do that. And we said, this is a federal problem. The federal government needs to act. So they did. They sent us the money. I think we're very well positioned now to put in place a temporary shelter. It's going to be able to. The main thing that it's going to do. Because 95% of the folks who come here, 95 to 98, depending on the data and the person you ask, but a very high significant number, don't want to stay here. They're trying to leave. So what we're doing is there's a temporary shelter so that they're not homeless, so they don't end up on the street. And then we're helping them get their bus pass, get their train ticket, get their mobile phone charged so they can tell someone that they're on their way. And that's the main thing that we're doing. And it was when we were running it at the county level previously, it was very successful. Like, we were just processing people through, getting people to the bus, getting people to the airport, getting people to the train station. And I have to say, we're very fortunate. Like, all of this, what I've seen in the newspapers and other jurisdictions, we are not seeing people stay here. We're not seeing immigrants that are coming across the border ending up in our homeless shelters. They're not showing up in our shelters. The only individuals that end up staying here are people who have families here, so they're staying with their families. But everybody else is leaving and is processing on. So that is what we anticipate is going to be the same. Is going to be what that federal money is used for, and I think it's great. Like, it was a huge all-team effort. You know, I was in Washington. I told the Biden administration we needed the money, but I can't take all the credit. Like, we also had help from Mike Levin, we had help from Scott Peters, we had help from Sarah Jacobs. Like, it was all hands on deck. So I think it's good, and it's a step in the right direction. No, we do actually, because we're tracking because if we knew if they come through our shelter, because we're taking them we're tracking where they end up. If they don't come to the shelter, we don't know. But everyone who comes to the drop-off point, we know where they're going. So because we're tracking where they're going, because we have to, we don't know they're after their family, but we also know the shelters. So we know where they go first, and we have data on who's in our shelters and they're not in the shelters. So those are the two things we do know.
Switching topics, what are we doing to tackle the opioid crisis? And I know you talked about this in the settlement, but if you could elaborate on that?
So yeah, I mentioned the $100 million opioid settlement. It's actually 120 that we think we're going to get. We know it's at least 100 over the next 10 years. So, whole bunch of stuff. First of all, I'm sure folks probably saw the first prosecution and conviction that we achieved for a dealer who was convicted of murder. So one of the things we've done is increase funding for our for our district attorney to have the resources for fentanyl enforcement. Second thing, and that's just the DA side. Second thing we've really done is look at how we can better distribute Narcan. And Narcan, for those who don't know, it's essentially like an emergency intervention if someone overdoses on fentanyl that they can be brought back to life. And that's been wildly successful. There's been over 18,000 doses of Narcan distributed. Obviously, most of them have not been used, but just knowing that that's out in the community, so in case there's some kind of tragedy that happens, that people have that tool available is really, really important. We've also been very, very focused on education, because a big piece of what's going on are kids who don't know that when they buy an illegal drug online, they think they're buying Adderall so they can study, or they think they're buying, I don't know, MDMA or some other kind of substance that's recreational. They don't know that these drugs are very likely to be laced with fentanyl. So we're doing a lot of education in schools around how many of these street narcotics are contaminated, and we're also distributing test strips so that they have the ability to find out and test. So that's another big piece of the work. So there's the enforcement piece, there's the education piece, there's the prevention piece, and I think there's also the part of the work that's really focused on people who might be unhoused in our community who don't want help and are refusing to get help. And so I've been very focused on implementing a new state law called SB 43, which is going to allow us for the first time to require that people who have an addiction and are so far gone that they are not able to make coherent decisions about their own well-being, to say that they have to get help, that is not a choice. And so we're moving forward as quickly as we can to begin implementation of SB 43, which is difficult. The hospitals are not excited because it means that people will end up taken to the hospitals. There's a lot of institutional stakeholders who just think, oh God, now we have to deal with these folks. And I say, I don't care. That's our responsibility. Like, people need help, and they should not be sleeping on our streets, because they have a fentanyl addiction and have spiraled into some place that's just beyond anyone's ability to reach them. And so we are beginning that process of really cracking down and saying, you have to get help.
Thank you. Next question is on budget. Will money for library budget allow for more staff hours to cover Saturdays? Some libraries did not reopen on Saturdays post-COVID. Also, many homeless people spend days and nights utilizing resources, but also as a safe haven.
I'm not sure. I don't want to answer a question I don't want to answer to. So I don't know, but I will get back to you. Our budget just came out. It's very big. It's $8.4 billion of budget. So I don't want to promise I read every line, but I will look up the library line item and see where that's at on Saturdays, and we will email.
We have seven questions on Windsor Point, no place like home. And so here's the first one. How do we know the cost effectiveness and quality of outcomes of no place like home at Windsor Point? Based on last month's state audit report on homelessness in California that found that the state lacks data on effectiveness. $24 billion allocated over the last 5 years, and the state has no current plans to collect data.
Doing more on Windsor Point, this is kind of a Windsor Point / data question. Should I just do that one and we can do the others?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a massive, I think, failure on the statewide level on lack of data and transparency around homelessness. I mean, I would say that in general about government expenditures. So homelessness being maybe the most egregious example, but it's not specific or particular only to homelessness. When I was elected, the first big initiative that I brought forward was for us to begin doing comprehensive data-driven audits at the county. They had never done that before. All the metrics that the county reported out was how much money they spent, not how much people had been helped. And it's been very important and a lot of work to try to shift how our county employees, 20,000 county employees, think about their job. Because they really kept telling me they're doing a great job, they're spending all the money the board told them to spend. And I'm like, that is not your job. Your job is to make sure that we're helping people, making an impact. And they kept saying, well, here's the briefing, you gave us X amount of dollars and we allocated it and the program ran. And I said, but how many people were helped? What happened with the money? What was the impact? So we started the first ever Office of Evaluation, Performance, and Analytics at the county to conduct audits to collect data across all the kinds of operations, beginning with a laser focus on homelessness. We hired a chief evaluation officer to run that work. We've partnered with a whole bunch of local universities to start, and actually national universities, including MIT, because they are like, nobody is gathering data on homelessness. So now they're working with us to try to gather that data. So I think we're going to be at the cutting edge in San Diego County and actually having audits. We just commissioned an entire audit of all of our homelessness programs, and we should have that back probably around November, December, a full 360 audit of all of our homelessness programs. So if you think that we don't have data on impact, you are right. If you think that the orientation has been for far too long and how much we spend instead of how many people we help, you are right. And it's one of the things that I am most passionate about and most focused on is making sure that every single dollar is used as effectively as possible to actually make a difference, because that's my main job, that's my responsibility, and that's really how I came to government in the first place. When I was a professor, what work I did was teaching students and also running research studies that looked at evaluating the effectiveness of government programs. That was a lot of my work. So again, I shouldn't have been shocked. I keep being shocked. How can you keep being shocked? But I was very unpleasantly surprised to find out that my assessment that we weren't doing enough on audits, accountability, data, and really knowing impact was even more right than I realized when I was elected at the state level, at the city level, at every level. So I think our county has taken some massive strides in the right direction, but it is a mess. Like, data is all from different sources. You have one program here that's spending the money on one thing, and then it's an overlap of another program. There's no central coordination. So that's, I think, an accurate assessment.
Thank you very much. Going specifically on Windsor Point, right now mental health residents at Windsor Point are not getting the help they need. Can the requirements for living at Windsor Point be modified only to include residents that are compatible with the services plus what they offer? Second question is, where are we at on the need to revise the county's no place like home agreement with Carlsbad so that Windsor Point can be moved to a proper location? If murders, attempted murders, drug dealers, child abusers, sex abusers need to be moved away from families and kids.
Two pieces of that. So first is, given the current situation we have with Windsor Point, We have increased services pretty significantly to be 24/7 around the clock. So that's one small step forward that I think is important. The bigger issue, right, is like, is this even an appropriate place for this activity and this set of services to exist? We have told the city of Carlsbad, we've told the developer, it's up to you guys, we're fine. If you want to modify, you want to take away or no place like company, that is fine from the county seat. We are very constrained in terms of what kinds of services can be provided and what kind of people can be served with no place like home funding, because it's state money. So we're like the pass-through. We sign the contracts, but the parameters of who can be served in the place like home money are set from the state. So you can choose to not take it. You can say we don't want the money, but you can't really choose who you use it for, the parameters of who gets served. So my understanding is that the city of Carlsbad is basically stuck because the city signed this lease and is stuck with the developer, but the developer only signed the lease with the belief that they would have the no place like home funding. We can't unilaterally pull it because it's contingent on the lease agreement. So the city's stuck because of the lease, and we're stuck because it was embedded in the lease. And unless the developer chose to, just chose on their own, both of us are stuck into this agreement because we can't modify what's actually included as funded in the no place like home. We can only not provide it, but we can't unilaterally decide to not provide it because then we would be in contract breach and in trouble with both the city and the developer. So that is the kind of naughty situation that we're in. Essentially, the development project would not have penciled if they didn't have the new place like home funding, which is why I think they structured that way, probably fairly unwisely.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I connect you with the city about this? Because that is definitely not what the city
I talked to them, I talked to your mayor about a month ago.
I talked to him yesterday. That's not what he is telling me. So I would love to get a meeting with all of us together so we can hash this out.
I think that would be
They're pointing
great.
the finger at you, you're pointing the finger at them, and we're getting nowhere.
I don't want to sound like I'm pointing the finger at them. I think that they are stuck legally. So I don't want this to sound like it's their fault or something. I think they probably signed a bad agreement. They made a mistake in the past, but at this point, my understanding is, I'm not the city, but my understanding is that they don't have any discretion. They're stuck.
I gave your team what needs to be revised. If you can take a look at that.
Okay.
I'll get you guys together because again, there's a lot of finger pointing. They're not stuck. We can move this. The Empire State Building was built in 13 months. I've been working on this for 2 years. I got nowhere, no help from anybody, and we need to move forward with this. So I would really appreciate your
I would be more than happy to. I spoke to them maybe 3 weeks or a month ago, and if you want to set up, you can help me set up a meeting. I can also call myself, but I'm more than happy to meet with them.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. 2 more questions on homelessness. The first one, are you supporting and working with the Sunbreak Ranch people? And if not, why not? And then the second, just a bullet point about mental health resources. Prop 1, adequate staffing for care work.
I'll do the first one, and then can you just ask the second one again? Thank you. Sunbreak Ranch. So I met with the Sunbreak Ranch folks. I was very interested in the proposal because I'm always interested in the outside of the box thinking and like how do we actually do something meaningful to solve our homelessness problem. I don't think there's a there. I mean, I said, okay, well, where are we going to put this? They said, well, we could put it at Miramar. Then I went and I talked to the military folks at Miramar. They said, hell no, there's unexploded ordinances all over the area that they're talking about, so it would be illegal as well as extremely dangerous to put anyone there. So I went back to some of the ranch folks and said, well, where else? And they said, well, we don't know. I'm like, and they said, well, how are we going to pay for it? And they said, we don't know. And I said, look, I'm going to be in favor of anything that can be a solution, but I can't spin my wheels trying to weave fairy tales of magical thinking. Like, I actually have a responsibility to deliver like real change immediately for people in my community with real solutions that can work today. So I'm much more interested in the city of San Diego. Mayor Todd Gloria has a proposal for 1,000 people to put in a homeless shelter at Kettner and Vine, which is right across the street from the naval station down there. Sorry, not the naval station, the Marine Corps training depot down there. It's right near the Old Town Transit stop. Like 1,000 people, great. 1,000 people off the street. This is a better plan. So again, like I'm very open to all creative ideas. I think we have to be creative, but in general, where am I going to spend my time and attention and energy? It's in stuff with data behind it. It's behind like ideas that actually are proven to work, and that have like realistic plans to get the funding, or not the funding, at least a plot of land, like at least that piece. So that's kind of where I'm at. If people have other ideas, if you're like, you know what, I know somebody who has the plot of land and they, come talk to me, right? I'm not, would never write anything off, but so far what I've seen is a lot of like fancy fairy tales.
Thank you. There's no question in here, but adequate staffing for care court, mental health resources, Prop 1. Any updates on any of these items?
Adequate staffing for mental health, Prop 1, and care court. Okay, great. Care court, it's going well. I mean, it's a big lift. So for those who don't know, we were the first county in the state to volunteer to do a pilot program called Care Court, where if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, you could be committed involuntarily for treatment. And we never thought that it was going to have a massive footprint. We thought that we did think that there was a important segment of our population, mostly folks with schizophrenia, that really badly needed help, that have not been able to get help. So a couple hundred people have already gone through Care Court, gone through the process. It's a long process because you have to make sure you have an advocate for the individual who has been referred to Care Court, because you don't want to have some situation where they, someone says, oh yeah, this person's like schizophrenic, lock them up, and then they don't get a fair evaluation. So they have an advocate, they have an evaluation, they go through a process. There's a specially trained judge who understands the standards for mandating treatment. So it's good. I think we've helped over 200 people, which is great. I do think that the bigger impact that I think I'm looking to see in terms of helping folks that are in our communities that really need help is probably not going to come from Care Court, because it's for folks with severe mental illness, but it's much more likely to come from implementing SB 43, which is what I mentioned previously, which is the state law that a lot of counties are really dragging their feet on implementing. I voted to implement it immediately. Unfortunately, I was voted down by my colleagues, so I was in the minority. But I do think there's a lot of fire that we put under people's feet to move as fast as possible. So we will be rolling out full implementation by next January. Again, not as fast as I thought. I thought we should have done it this January. So I don't think it's as good as we could do, but I do think that's where I think we're going to see a lot more of the kind of impact of people who we know need help and they're refusing to get help, and giving us the capacity to make sure that they get the help that they need. Prop 1, I'm very excited about Prop 1 because when we talk about making sure people can get the help that they need, especially with implementation of SB 43, one of the biggest barriers is that there's no treatment facilities. Like, you need actual treatment facilities where people can stay for a few weeks, sometimes a few months, and we don't have those in the county. We don't have enough of them. And so what we're going to be able to do with the Prop 1 funding, because it's going to be a lot of it's going to be upfront for infrastructure, is we're going to be able to build out those treatment beds so that if people have addiction issues and they need treatment, that they'll be able to go somewhere. Right now, even if you are interested in seeking treatment, even if it's voluntary, if you're on Medicaid or not, if you're uninsured, there's really no facilities. If you have insurance, there's actually enough facilities, and that's fine. So for our kind of employed private sector market folks, we're in good shape. But for our unhoused population in particular, who are the ones who most desperately need that treatment, there's just no facilities. So this Prop 1 funding, I think, is going to make a big difference. I also think it's great for another reason that people don't talk about a lot, but $1 billion was set aside for veterans, and that was in the state bill, which is great for us because we have the vast majority of the veterans in the state of California. So we're getting a massively disproportionate share of the money because we have more veterans. So I can't take credit for having thought of that. I can only say I'm proud to have supported it because it is so good, especially for our district, right? For Carlsbad, up in Oceanside, for Point Loma, for Coronado, like it's just a huge, huge area of veterans.
Perfect. Switching to another area, small business question. What support is available outside of grants to help small businesses in Carlsbad survive and thrive? We are struggling with rising rents and minimum wage increases.
Love that question. So I'm so grateful for all the incredible work of the Carlsbad Chamber. I think Carlsbad Chamber does great work, and we've been really happy to provide a bunch of grant support for the Carlsbad Chamber to administer a lot of their programs to support small businesses here in Carlsbad. I'm a big believer that government, especially at the county level, is kind of too big, should not try to solve everyone's problems. It's really about how to empower local communities and local groups who actually know what the heck is going on in their own community to have the resources they need to tackle some of these challenges, because obviously every community is different. So really appreciate the work of the Carlsbad Chamber on a lot of those issues, and really happy we've been able to provide a bunch of funding for those programs.
Sorry, just to follow up on that, sorry.
I want to be respectful that we have a bunch of cards, but if you could write down your follow-up and we can get to it and we can come back to it. I just don't want us to not have time for everyone's questions. Thank you.
We have the highest electric rates in the U.S., and SDG&E made $1 billion last year. What is the county doing to help fix this problem? It hurts low-income people particularly.
Our electricity rates are out of control. We all know it. Make sure, Erin, can you make sure she gets a card, please, so we can get her card?
Put it all down on paper.
Okay. Well, hopefully we can circle back around after we finish this. So this is one of the reasons why I asked the county, and I brought forward a proposal for us to join San Diego Community Power, so we could start to break some of the monopoly in terms of our electricity provision. I'm not going to lie, it is a long road. So we have begun the process. San Diego Community Power was formed just a couple years ago. We've now begun the process. The county joined, starting to procure our own energy and look for energy at lower rates to be able to provide lower rates to our customers. And we met on this on kind of the projections. We are going to get there, but it is going to take probably 7 years of a fairly gradual downcrease. And I wish I could say something more positive. I can only say that we are in a kind of got locked into a pretty bad situation with the lack of sort of foresight around energy prices, and now we're in a position to begin buying energy on our own as a public utility and being able to not be driven by profit, but actually say, hey, how can we provide cheap rates to our customers? And we're in the process of building out all those procurement contracts. So we're moving in that direction, but I wish I could tell you it's going to happen overnight, and I can't. It's we got locked in as a community into very high rates, and we have to unwind that by moving towards being our own power company and procuring our own energy from different providers.
Thank you. This is the final question. The supervisor is staying around, so if we didn't get to your question, you'll stick around. She'll be able to answer something one-on-one. But the last question, do you have any plans to foster relationships with other coastal regions, such as Imperial Beach, as a partnership to tackle the Tijuana sewage issues?
Absolutely. Actually, the person I was speaking with on my drive here was Paloma Aguirre, the mayor of IB. So I feel like that was a plant. That's a great question. And so Paloma and I work very closely together. And in fact, She came to me just a couple weeks ago and said they really need help gathering some more data on what they think they sort of suspect might be a spike in non-reportable illnesses. So in other words, illnesses that aren't severe enough to warrant mandatory data collection, but obviously might be like a canary in the coal mine of some kind of sewage contamination. So that's one of the things we're working on right now, is trying to figure out how the county can step up to help collect that data. So at Paloma, I talked all about the work we've done on getting the $300 million and continue to fight for the other 310, and the work we've done on getting Mexico to fix the plant on their side of the border. And Paloma's been a really great partner in all of that. So, okay, I appreciate you all. I know we have at least one question. I will stay here. Anyone have more questions, please come talk to me. And just thank you so much for being here.
I did get answered either. Yeah, that lady's question. Okay, so the thing is that